Hey guys, here we are with round 2 of Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Nonito Donaire film study, grading Guillermo Rigondeaux. I'd like to apologize when I recorded this. I thought Chacal meant cat. I thought because he was very agile and had great reflexes. I thought they were calling him the cat. It means jackal. I posted the video with the correct title. But I wanted to address that too. I got some people calling me a racist because I said he was an opportunistic predator. That's just the Wikipedia definition of a jackal. So please tone it down. Also, one of the reasons that I said that is that a lot of his offense kind of comes from his opponents being out of position. And a lot of times it's just them putting themselves out of position, i.e. being a counterpuncher. So opportunistic, I just kind of felt like it fit the criteria very well. But anyway, we're going to do the second round. But I wanted to highlight something. There are very few fighters, like probably in all of history, that have had as good a positioning and understanding of positioning in all of boxing history than that have had better than Guillermo Rigondeaux. His understanding of positioning and where he needs to be in the ring and what he needs to do when, and even though he doesn't always control his opponent physically, right? He'll show them the jab to control them with the jab. Even when it's not a punch, he'll be putting it out there. And although he doesn't use the most high level techniques to set up his offense, like probing, gathering information from your opponent with your feints before you commit to your offense. Even though he doesn't do those things, and those are usually what predicate an understanding of positioning in the first place. I think that naturally you learn to do those things first, and then you start to understand positioning a little more as you get to be a better fighter. Guillermo Rigondeaux has just so much experience fighting that he has like a near perfect understanding of positioning, and I want to talk a little bit about that with this clip right here. I showed it in the last video, and it was him feinting him. Then Donaire puts himself out of position, right? And then when Donaire comes, because he bites on the feint, right? Then when he comes back into position, he actually just tries to move back into the same position that he was in, and then Rigondeaux feints him again, and then catches him with the body shot. Again, I don't know if that body shot lands, but I just want to point that out, how important it is in understanding positioning, because it's going to come up a lot in the next round, and I thought this was just a beautiful understanding of, or example of why you're going to see a lot of the stuff that you see in the second round. It shows just how smart and how brilliant of a fighter Rigondeaux is, in spite of, I'm saying he lacks some of the fundamentals of like an A-level offense, right? He's fast, he hits hard, he has great technique, fantastic technique, but he doesn't set up his punches in what I regard to be like the A-level fighter, or the the B-level setup of punches, or the B-level defenses. But when Donaire comes back into this position, he doesn't do anything to control Rigondeaux, and then Rigondeaux is just free here. Whoops. Free here to land that shot. So we're gonna take a look in this coming round, and I'm gonna show you why that stuff's important and why Rigondeaux's such a brilliant fighter. So right here, right off the bat, you see them vying for hand position, right? And I'm gonna kind of, let's see, put it in slow-mo so you guys can check this out a little better. Right off the bat, touching gloves, he shoots the jab, but it's not like a real jab, right? It's a kind of a probing jab, and Donaire swats it down, right? And then he goes for a counter, right? But when Donaire takes control of Rigondeaux's hand by swatting it down to go over the top, Rigondeaux ducks down. I don't know if I should have gone a little slower, but right as he does it, right, he's going to stick his hand out, boom. Donaire swats it down, and Rigondeaux ducks his head, right, and gets his hand up so that he can get over the top of the counter hook, right, that could come, or the counter jab, or whatever. And as soon as he's out of position, right, and because he's been feinted and he moved out of position for a punch that didn't come, Donaire could catch him with a straight right, right? He could catch him with any punch, you know, except for the left hand, because Rigondeaux is controlling it, right? So it's very similar to the situation that you just saw where Donaire got baited into moving out of position because he was feinted, but Rigondeaux doesn't move back into the position that he was just in. Boom. What does he do after dodging what would be the next punch? He controls Donaire, and the way that he does that is by punching him in the face. You know, he gives him a different look and immediately controls him and takes a side step, right? Like if you watch his feet. We'll just watch this in real time. So swats it down, boom, and he takes an angle and moves off the line so that he's not in line for Nonito Donaire's offense. And that's one of the really brilliant things about Guillermo Rigondeaux, is he has like a nearly a complete understanding of positioning. He's just not the greatest fighter at getting you out of position. You know, like great fighters capitalize on your mistakes. Or no, good fighters capitalize on your mistakes. Great fighters make you make mistakes. And those mistakes are generally in positioning, right? And Rigondeaux doesn't do as much as some great fighters to get you out of position as he does capitalizing on the mistakes that you make when you wind up out of position, when you put yourself out of position. And a lot of that is just like, you know, counter punching. So here we got Donaire feints him, goes to the body, right? And Rigondeaux has to start thinking now, oh, he's coming to the body. So what does he do now? When he feints him, Rigondeaux brings his arm down, and he's like, okay, so he's going to the body. I'll try to catch that body shot and move back at the same time. Positioning, right? Understanding where Donaire is at all time. Again, also, very active guard, right? So it makes it hard to time Rigondeaux. He goes for the body shot again, and he circles out. Rigondeaux does, and he swipes his arm down to catch the body shot if it comes again. Very smart. Donaire kind of comes in, feints, and then he tries to control his hand, right? I think he did that before too, I'm not sure. And Rigondeaux is able to get away. The Chacal. I like calling him the cat, but whatever. Donaire's trying to be on the outside. Really interesting. See how he's keeping his glove and he's shooting to the outside. But he doesn't really hide that punch at all, as you notice, Donaire. Right, he comes in, establishes lead foot dominance, and whether it's a jab to the body or a left hand, you know, he kind of explodes, and Guillermo Rigondeaux does the right thing as soon as his opponent gets lead foot dominance and just moves out of the way, right? And there are like other things that he does too. Sometimes he throws the straight left, and now this is really interesting. So we saw a couple of times where Donaire would feint him, right? And then Donaire, the last couple times, actually just committed to his offense. Excuse me, guys. Let me get a drink real quick. And Donaire would commit to his offense, right? So now we've got Rigondeaux controlling him with the jab, right? And look at how he steps when he does that too, right? Control with the jab and step, control with the jab and step, control, and instead of stepping, right, he kind of picks up that Donaire's going to come in for something. He ducks down, establishes lead foot dominance. So Rigondeaux thinks he's going to throw a punch, and he goes to counter him, right, responding to the information that he has from his opponent, right? But because Donaire was being offensively responsible, right? Remember when we were talking in the first video about why it's so important to feint your opponent? And although he wasn't feinting earlier in the round when he was just throwing those punches, but now that he's given that information to Rigondeaux, he feints him, and Rigondeaux falls for it and counters. Now, if Donaire didn't feint right here, he could have just straight up gotten knocked out, You know, that's like a huge punch, and you really don't want to walk into that. But again, boom, step in, and almost catches him. You know, he doesn't, though, because it was a good feint from Donaire. But Rigondeaux, using the information that he's got from Donaire wisely, even though he doesn't catch that shot. And then again, hand control, taking little tiny steps. Donaire feints him again. And what does Rigondeaux do? He throws a punch. Donaire feints him again. Feints again. And Rigondeaux throws a punch. Ooh, and then he finally doesn't believe him. But it's really clever, though, how Rigondeaux throws punches 3 times in a row, right? You might not think, like, that he's just swinging wildly, right? But the thing is after the first one, he might think that Donaire's like, oh, okay, I can throw a punch now, right? I'm free because I already made him give away his cards, so now he'll do something else. And if that's where, if that's the level that Donaire is thinking on, then it's going to pay huge dividends when he comes in and he catches him with that shot, right? Now he's like, oh, he showed him 2 feints, and he did it twice, so he feints him again. You know, it doesn't work out in Rigondeaux's favor, but it's really smart of him to kind of like make that gamble and throw 3 counter shots in a row because his opponent's really not going to expect it. But then he kind of winds up a little bit out of position here as he's moving, and he throws this jab, but he commits to this jab as a punch after Donaire slips that shot, right? So Donaire slips that shot, and Rigondeaux kind of finds himself, you know, out of position, right? Because now Donaire has like almost lead foot dominance, so he goes to throw a punch, and Donaire actually slips that one because Donaire wasn't going to do anything, but an understanding of positioning kind of gets Rigondeaux a little bit in trouble right here, and he kind of eats that left hook counter. I think he eats it. It looks like it lands. It's not a super hard punch, but regardless, even great fighters or really high-level defensive fighters or fighters with great understanding of positioning, they're still going to get caught every once in a while. But notice how after that shot, Donaire misses the second shot. I think it hits Rigo on the arm, and then he's able to circle out away from lead foot dominance and get away. But granted, that's not the example that I was hoping to set with understanding positioning and feints and stuff, because there'll be better ones here. Donaire again going back to the feint or the punches, but now Rigo doesn't know whether he's going to commit or not, so he just moves out of the way, you know, resetting, kind of figuring out what he's supposed to do. Now right here, he feints him with that left hook, right? And what does Rigo do? He puts his arm out to control him and just takes a step back. And what Donaire did in the last round is when his opponent feinted him, he went back to the same position, and Rigo, being an intelligent fighter, knows that he can't go back to that spot. He's already lost that position, right? Again, right here, shows him the jab, and then Donaire feints him, right? Feints right here. He reacts to it, and then Rigo says, oh, I can't go back to that position. You know, it seems really, it's like really subtle stuff, but it's really smart, because you saw how Donaire was actually getting hit by punches because he was moving back to that position. Right here, this is really interesting. Like, a lot of times people assume this is like a real punch. This is something that Danny Jacobs was doing to Gennady Golovkin, right? It wasn't a real punch, right? But while you're circling and you're crossing this little gap in the ring, right, you throw a punch to kind of occupy your opponent, right? Your opponent doesn't know, especially the first time you do it, that it's not a punch, right? But he does it as he's crossing this little gap, and he's moving to his left, and he's going to step onto the line that Donaire has already created, right? Because Donaire's cutting the ring off, right? So he's going to actually wind up like walking right into like a trouble, right? Like out of position. So in order to avoid being out of position, he throws that little punch, gets Donaire to move, and then it opens up the rest of the ring for him, right? Really smart. Moving, and then this is exactly why right here, why you throw that little punch, right? He doesn't do it that time, and he moves right onto the line with Donaire as Donaire's cutting the ring off, and Donaire's actually able to land a punch. But that's exactly why you throw that little like looping punch that's not really a punch. That's something that a fighter, Erzlandi Lara, does a lot. But if you watch his fights, he kind of tries to make it a punch, you know, rather than just being a way to control your opponent and circle around the ring. He tries to land it as a scoring blow. You know, it's not, as you can see, the technique is not like, it's not a real punch. He's just like, it's just for positioning. But, you know, a fighter like Erzlandi Lara has thrown that like so many thousands of times that he's like, I'll say, quote unquote, perfecting it to kind of, you know, maybe score points with it. But it's not, as you can see also, he's not setting it up, right? You're just kind of, if you do land it as a punch, you're just kind of hoping your opponent makes a mistake and gets hit. So let's get back to this fight, sorry. Tangent. Little feinting from Donaire, and then feinting back from Rigo, thinking that a counter might come. And this is really interesting. So this is kind of more what I was talking about. When you get out of position, and then Rigondeaux responds really well. Like, this is the bread and butter of it, right? He feints him, right? And then Rigo responds to the feint by dipping down, but because Donaire doesn't have lead foot dominance, he doesn't have to move. So what does he do? Then he stands up and he shows him the jab. It's not a real punch, right? But he shows him the jab to control him, to stop him from acting on the feint, right? To stop him from utilizing the information that he just got from feinting him and taking control back of the situation. And then probing, you know, showing him the jab. And then Donaire doesn't react at all to that last one. So what does Rigondeaux do? Shoots a real jab and hits him in the face. And that's exactly what you're supposed to do with that style of probing. When your opponent doesn't react to it, you want to throw a shot. And when they do react to it, you want to counter what you make them react to, or what they react to it with. Feinting him. And now this again, right here, exactly what I'm talking about, positioning. Donaire feints him. He circles down to catch a jab to the body, and then right after, because he just gave away all this information, he's out of position, he controls Donaire with his jab and shoots a jab and uses that to get back into position. These are much better examples of what I was trying to show earlier. But really smart, a master of position. You know, as you can tell, he's only been out of position really twice in this entire round. I haven't really been paying attention to what punches have been landed. I think 2 punches have been landed on Rigondeaux, and I'm not sure how many Rigondeaux has landed, but he's definitely winning the round, I think. I'm not really paying attention to that, but feinting, not really that much there. He controls his head off of the thing. Doesn't really land a punch, and then misses his jab, kind of controls his head, and then circles out, or like jumps out. Hand control, really smart. Hand control, dips down, realizes he's out of position, and takes a step back, right? Really smart. Great understanding of defense, positioning, and when he's not in control of the position. And then again, really smart, right? Shows him the feint, and then does the same feint that he gave him from the first fight, or from the first round, right? Boom. And he doesn't react to it either, so it kind of sets it up. And Donaire's not in time to counter. Ooh. Boom. So what goes on here? I think he feinted him. Let's watch Donaire. Yeah, so Donaire feints him right here. He's going to dip down and a little bit to his left. And then that causes Rigo to counter him, right? To try and counter him. Boom. then with the straight left, and then he gets really tricky by throwing the third punch, and even the second punch was something that Donaire probably wasn't expecting, but because he kind of goes above and beyond what Donaire is predicting, he winds up catching him with the shot. Interesting right here, shows him the jab, right, then feints the right hand. And I think what he was trying to do is I think he was trying to set this left hand up with that like kind of bolo shot, right? Boom. And then he super telegraphed punch, but Donaire doesn't bite. He doesn't dip out to the left side. And Rigo kind of misses with that shot. But really intelligently holds his hand out there, controls his head, and pivots back off the line, right? It's interesting because that's a really high-level technique, the way that he uses his outstretched arm to control Donaire's head and then to pivot off for his balance. But he doesn't do that a lot. You know, like there was an exchange in the round one where he missed a punch and then Donaire caught him, like Donaire rolled and then caught him with a left hook, and then Rigo missed another shot, but Rigondeaux didn't control Donaire at all, right? So this is kind of the first time that we've really seen any kind of like head control from Rigondeaux. Usually he just kind of relies on his near perfect positioning to not take any offense, and that's a really interesting like topic when you think about it. If you like, is he a defensive wizard? Right? Is his defense just that good? Or is it not defense and it's just an understanding of positioning, so his defense does look good? Right? Like, how do you quantify that? I'm not saying his defense is bad. I'm just saying at which category do you give it to him, right? Because his offense is the same way, right? In terms of positioning, right? He's in the right position to land this offense or this, or, you know, he understands where his opponent is in relation to him. So it's really interesting where you draw the line between calling him like great defense when he's not really, you know, blocking shots. You know, it's not a lot of slipping shots. It's not a lot of like stuff like that. It's just him not being in position to be hit, right? Because the most effective offenses are landed when your opponent's out of position, but he's just so difficult to get out of position. Nonito Donaire doesn't have a lot of options to land it. So that's just like interesting philosophically to think about for me. But anyway, feints him, right? Establishes lead foot dominance, and what does Rigondeaux do? Controls him with his jab hand, right? And I think, you know, Donaire still gets a piece of him with that right hand, but again, brilliantly, right? Dips down. He's out of position, kind of gets hit with that shot while he's ducking because he knows that he needs to be moving because he's out of position. And as Donaire throws that left hook, he gets out of the way of that too. Boom. Really good positioning. Now, with all of his weight on his back leg, he knows he's out of position again, shoots the jab at him, catches him, but Donaire, you know, lunges in and catches him with the left to the the straight right to the body. But just a really interesting sequence, you know, so many position changes, and they each catch each other with a shot, you know, but just really high level stuff. You know, I call it like sea-level boxing, right? But the interesting thing is that most fighters will never get to like really high-level defense or high-level understanding of positioning because they're so much more focused on offense, right? And that's one of the things that makes Guillermo Rigondeaux such an anomaly is that he, how do you say it? I don't know how to say it. Maybe I'll figure it out in my next video. But you just never see fighters get to this level because they focus so much more on their offense, where he's understanding, you know, the actual like art of boxing. But anyway, let's move on. A lot of feinting. Really interesting. So feints him, shows him the high guard, right? Nonito Donaire feints him. He brings up his glove, right? And because he's like, semi out of position, he responded to that feint. He knows that he needs to do something, so what does he do? He throws a punch and catches Nonito Donaire with it, right? Because you can't just move and, flinch or, do something. When your opponent feints you, you have to make some kind of reaction. You have to reset. You have to get out of range. You have to do something because they're feinting you for a reason, right? If you just stay there and you don't react to the feints or the probes or whatever, they'll just punch you in the face. Remember earlier when he threw that shot, when he was probing with his jab, and then Donaire didn't do anything to the third jab, and Rigo just caught him with the shot. Feints him, right? Boop. And when he goes to move out of position, he just circles. This is very similar. That's very similar to the left hook, right? When he's out of position, notice he's crossing the same he's crossing the same stretch of ring, right? That he ate that body shot before. So he shows him the feint and circles out. Shows him another jab so he can get out. And controls his head. And I can't tell if that body shot lands. I don't think it does, though. But again, controlling him so he can create space. And I think this one does land. Now, he doesn't do anything right here. He goes to control him. But what does he do with that hand, actually? Let's see. So who moves first? Interesting. So he kind of goes to put his hand out and then try to circle out Rigondeaux's hand. Like try to get his hand on top of it and kind of pull it wide. And that would open Guillermo Rigondeaux up. And he lands a body shot. And that's because, I think Rigondeaux was a little late with his punch right there, or with his control, to make sure he could get around the ring right there. And he misses his own counter. And right there, very similar, right? Brings his hands up, right? Ducks down, and then he throws that left hook. And that's not like a, he does commit to it. It is a real punch, right? But he doesn't do it because he's trying to land it as a punch. He's just trying to circle out and not be caught in that little corner of the ring. Because that's where he just got caught again. And this is really good. Understanding positioning. Donaire establishes lead hand dominance, right? Gets his hand up on top of Rigondeaux's, right? And establishes lead foot dominance. And Rigondeaux takes like a little step back and nearly catches him with a huge shot. I can't tell if he exactly does. Man, I wish it was a little more clear or a little bigger. You guys are probably going to see this on YouTube. I think when I upload them, they're a little more clear. And you guys are going to be like, he's such an idiot, man. Obviously, that punch lands, but I can't really tell. But Donaire falls off balance enough that I'm pretty inclined to believe that it kind of hits him on the chin. But really great understanding of positioning and knowing like that he's going to be able to catch him with that shot when he takes lead foot dominance. That's something that Mayweather was doing to Manny Pacquiao too, when Manny Pacquiao would try and establish lead foot dominance. I wonder if Pacquiao got it from watching this fight, or Mayweather got it from watching this fight. Tries to establish superior hand position and superior foot position. He moves back, almost catches him with a jab. And I'm not exactly sure why he throws that left hand. But he doesn't really set it up. Maybe he could have caught him, timing him, but... And we're in the final seconds of this round. This is 30 fucking minutes, dude. I'm so sorry, guys. Hope this isn't boring. But yeah, I think that Rigondeaux won that round. I'm not sure, because I wasn't counting punches or anything, but he seemed to have like superior positioning most of the round, understanding when to punch and when not to punch, when to control his opponent. And although he doesn't do it in a physical way, right? Like when you want your defense, like the really high level defense, you want to be able to control your opponent and their positioning when you're out of position. Um, it's so hard to quantify because usually when you throw a punch, you're out of position, and then you want to control your opponent, right? Or if you just happen to be out of position because your opponent establishes lead foot dominance against you, you need to control your opponent. But Rigondeaux doesn't really miss a lot of punches, right? So I don't know, it's hard to say exactly, but he's also like very rarely out of position anyway. So you don't really have to control your opponent when you're not out of position, because you can just use your standard like C-level boxing skills, right? God, that sounds so bad. I guess I need to find a different way to say it because people keep calling me a hater. But your basic boxing movements are what I call like the C-level skills. You learn them every day in the gym, moving them. You don't need an opponent to practice them, dipping, pivoting, those kinds of things. But using those kind of skills, those are all you really need when you aren't out of position. And then he does other things like so he has great footwork to get himself out of position or back into position, but he also controls his opponents with his jab really well when he does wind up out of position, even though he's not necessarily just controlling their head or whatever. I don't know. Grading Rigondeaux with this system is a very slippery slope, I think. But he's showing that he's a brilliant fighter. He has an immense amount of experience. Just lacking a little bit in his ability to set up his offense, not just take apart his opponent's defense, if that makes any sense, or take advantage of his opponent being out of position. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks, guys.